December 1st, 1948, Somerton Beach, Adelaide, South Australia. The summer sun beats down on the golden sand. Families enjoy the beach, children play in the waves, couples stroll along the shore. It's a perfect Australian summer day. But lying against the seawall, perfectly dressed in a suit and tie, is a man. He's not moving. Passers-by assume he's drunk, sleeping off a night of celebration. They walk past, barely giving him a second glance. But he's not drunk. He's not sleeping. He's dead. And when police arrive to investigate, they discover something extraordinary. This man has no identification. No wallet, no papers, no money. Every label has been carefully removed from his clothing. His dental records match no one on file. His fingerprints match no criminal record in Australia or anywhere else in the world. He has no name, no past, no identity. In his pocket, investigators find a scrap of paper with 2 words printed on it: Tamam Shud. It's a phrase from an ancient Persian poem meaning ended or finished. This is the story of the Somerton Man, one of the most baffling mysteries in Australian history. A case involving coded messages, possible espionage, a mysterious woman, and a death that has never been explained. For over 70 years, investigators, amateur sleuths, and forensic scientists have tried to answer one simple question: who was he? And despite decades of investigation, advances in DNA technology, and countless theories, that question remains unanswered. Until very recently. Let's go back to the beginning. December 1st, 1948, Somerton Beach, Adelaide. It's approximately 6:30 a.m. A couple, the Lyons, are walking along the beach. They notice a man lying against the seawall. He's impeccably dressed in a brown suit, white shirt, red and blue tie, brown shoes. His head is resting against the wall. His legs are crossed. One arm is extended upward, bent at the elbow. The position is odd, almost theatrical. It looks staged. But Mr. Lyons assumes the man is simply drunk or sleeping. It's not unusual to see someone sleeping on the beach after a night out. They walk on. Later that morning, around 7 a.m., another beachgoer, John Lyons, no relation to the couple, sees the same man in the same position. He notices the man's arm is still extended upward. He watches for a moment, sees no movement, assumes the man is drunk. He moves on. Around 7:30 a.m., a third witness sees the man, still in the same position, still not moving, still ignored. It's not until later that morning that someone finally realizes something is wrong. The man isn't breathing. His skin is cold. He's dead. The police are called. When they arrive, they find the scene exactly as witnesses described it. A well-dressed man lying peacefully against the seawall, looking as if he simply fell asleep. There's no signs of a struggle, no visible injuries, no blood, no indication of foul play. But there are some odd details. The man's pockets are nearly empty. No wallet, no identification papers, no money, no keys, no personal effects of any kind. He has a pack of cigarettes, a box of matches, a comb, and a partially used ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach. His clothing is expensive, well made, but every single label has been removed. Not torn off accidentally, but carefully cut away. His shirt, his suit, his tie, his underwear, every item of clothing has been deliberately delabeled. And there's a half-smoked cigarette resting behind his ear. The police search the immediate area. They find nothing. No belongings, no luggage, no clues to the man's identity. It's as if he materialized on the beach fully dressed and then died. An autopsy is ordered immediately. The autopsy is conducted by Sir John Burton Cleland, one of Australia's leading pathologists. What he finds is deeply puzzling. The man is approximately 40 to 45 years old. He's in excellent physical condition, muscular, well-nourished. His hands show no signs of manual labor. They're smooth, suggesting he didn't work with his hands. His calves are unusually well-developed, suggesting he may have been a dancer or someone who spent a lot of time on his toes. But here's where it gets strange. The man's stomach and internal organs show signs of congestion and hemorrhage. His spleen is abnormally large. His heart and liver show unusual damage. These are signs consistent with poisoning. But Dr. Cleland cannot find any traces of poison in the body. Not in the stomach contents, not in the blood, not in any of the organs. He tests for every known poison available in 1948. Nothing. The stomach contents show the man's last meal was a pasty, a meat pie. There's no indication this food was poisoned. But there's something odd about the stomach lining. It shows signs of acute gastric hemorrhage, as if exposed to something corrosive or toxic. Dr. Cleland's conclusion: death by poisoning, possibly a rare or unknown poison that leaves no trace. Or possibly a poison that metabolizes so quickly it's gone by the time the body is discovered. But what poison and why? The cause of death is officially listed as unknown. While the autopsy is underway, police begin investigating the man's clothing, hoping to find some clue to his identity. The suit is well made, possibly European in style. The shoes are expensive. Everything suggests a man of means, someone who took care in his appearance. But again, every single label has been removed, except one. On a small fob pocket inside the man's trousers, investigators find a tiny pocket usually used for carrying a watch or coins. Inside this pocket is a scrap of paper rolled up tightly. When they unroll it, they find two words printed in elegant script: Tamam Shud. The investigators don't recognize the phrase. It's clearly not English. They consult linguists, who identify it as Persian, or possibly Urdu. The phrase means ended or finished. It's the final words of a poem. But what poem? And why would a dead man have these words in his pocket? The search begins for the source of this phrase. Librarians, academics, and literature experts are consulted. Finally, someone identifies it. It's from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a collection of Persian poetry, translated by Edward Fitzgerald in the 19th century. Specifically, it's from the final page, the last words of the entire collection. Someone had torn this phrase from a book and placed it in the dead man's pocket. But why? Is it a suicide note? A message? A calling card? And where is the book this came from? The police make a public appeal. Does anyone recognize this man? Does anyone have a copy of the Rubaiyat with the final page torn out? The appeal generates enormous public interest. The case is front-page news across Australia. Hundreds of people come forward claiming to recognize the man, but none of the identifications lead anywhere. Missing persons reports are checked. Nothing matches. Then, in late January 1949, nearly 2 months after the body was found, a man comes forward with a book. His name is not recorded. He wishes to remain anonymous, but his story is verified. He says that on November 30th, 1948, the night before the body was discovered, he was parked near Somerton Beach. When he got back into his car, he found a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam lying on the back seat. He had never seen this book before. Someone had placed it in his car, possibly while he was away from the vehicle. He didn't think much of it at the time, just assumed someone had left it by mistake. But when he heard about the Somerton Man case and the Tamam Shud scrap, he checked his copy of the book. The final page was torn out. The missing piece matches perfectly with the scrap found in the dead man's pocket. The police now have the book, and when they examine it under ultraviolet light, they make an astonishing discovery. On the back cover, Written in pencil in microscopic handwriting is a phone number, and below that, what appears to be a coded message. The phone number belongs to a woman. She's a nurse living in Adelaide, just a short distance from Somerton Beach. The police don't release her name to protect her privacy, but in later years, she's been identified as Jessica Ellen Thompson, though she went by various names, including Joe Thompson and Justin. When police contact her and show her the book, her reaction is strange. Witnesses say she looked shocked, possibly frightened. She nearly faints, but she denies knowing anything about it. She says she doesn't recognize the book, doesn't know the dead man, has no idea why her phone number would be in this book. But there's more. Police show her photographs of the Somerton Man, taken post-mortem. They're trying to see if she recognizes him. She looks at the photos and says no, she doesn't know him. She's never seen him before. But witnesses later claim that her reaction suggested otherwise. She seemed disturbed, emotional. Some investigators believe she was lying. The police press her. She finally admits that during World War II, she gave a copy of the Rubaiyat to an army officer she knew, a man named Alfred Boxall. But she insists that Boxall is alive and living in Sydney. She hasn't seen him in years, but she's certain he's not the Somerton Man. Police track down Alfred Boxall. He's indeed alive, living in Sydney, and he still has the copy of the Rubaiyat that Justin gave him. The book is intact, complete with the final page. It's not the book found in the car near Somerton Beach. So where did this other book come from? And why did it have Justin's phone number in it? Justin refuses to say more. She maintains she knows nothing about the dead man. The police have no evidence to contradict her. The matter is dropped, but the mystery deepens. Let's talk about the coded message found in the book. On the back cover, written in tiny pencil letters, are 5 lines of seemingly random letters. MRG OABB, TB IMANTP, LIABOA QC, ITTMT SAMSTGAB, and a final line that appears crossed out and harder to read. Is this a code? A cipher? A message? Cryptographers, codebreakers, intelligence agencies all examine these letters. The Australian Military Intelligence Service looks at it. The US military is consulted. Amateur codebreakers spend decades trying to crack it. No one succeeds. Some believe it's a simple substitution cipher. Others think it's a book cipher, where each letter represents a word or page number from another text. Some theorize it's not English at all, but initials or abbreviations in another language. Some think it's not a code at all, just random letters or shorthand notes that have no meaning beyond the person who wrote them. One theory suggests it's an acrostic, where the first letter of each line spells out a message. The letters don't form any recognizable word. Another theory proposes it's a one-time pad cipher, the kind used by spies during the Cold War. If that's true, it's unbreakable without the key. The key could be anything: a specific book, a phrase, a sequence of numbers known only to the sender and receiver. To this day, the code, if it is a code, has never been cracked. It remains one of the most famous unsolved ciphers in history. So who was the Somerton Man? And why did he die? Over the decades, theories have multiplied. Let's examine the most compelling ones. Theory 1. He was a spy. This is the most dramatic theory, but it has some circumstantial support. The timing is significant. December 1948. The Cold War is beginning. Australia is a strategic location, close to Asia, a key ally of the West. Soviet intelligence is known to be operating in the region. The Somerton Man's behavior, the removed labels, the lack of identification, the possible coded message, all of this is consistent with tradecraft, the techniques used by intelligence operatives to maintain anonymity. Some investigators believe he was a Soviet agent, possibly involved in espionage targeting British weapons testing at Woomera, a top-secret facility in South Australia. Others think he was an Allied agent, possibly American or British, killed by enemy operatives. The poison theory supports this. Intelligence agencies had access to rare poisons that left few traces: digitalis from foxglove plants, exotic plant alkaloids, nerve agents. Some of these could cause the symptoms observed in the autopsy: heart failure, gastric hemorrhage, organ damage, without leaving obvious traces. But there's a problem with the spy theory. No intelligence agency, Soviet, British, American, or Australian, has ever acknowledged the Somerton Man as one of their own. Declassified documents from the era make no mention of him. If he was a spy, he's been completely disavowed. Theory 2. He was a victim of a love affair gone wrong. This theory centers on Justin, the nurse with the phone number in the book. Some investigators believe the Somerton Man was in love with her, possibly had an affair with her, and when she rejected him, he committed suicide on the beach near her home. The Tamam Shud scrap could be a romantic gesture, a reference to the end of their relationship, taken from a book of love poetry. It's ended. It's finished. Justin's strange reaction when shown the photographs supports this. Perhaps she did know him. Perhaps she was protecting her reputation, her marriage. She was married by 1948, living with her husband. If she'd had an affair, admitting it to police would have destroyed her life. But if it was suicide, what poison did he use? And why go to such elaborate lengths, removing all labels, carrying a coded message? That seems excessive for a lovesick suicide. Theory 3. He was a victim of murder, unrelated to espionage. Perhaps the Somerton Man was involved in criminal activity, smuggling, black market trading, something that got him killed. The expensive clothing suggests money. The lack of identification suggests someone trying to hide their tracks. The poison could have been administered by criminal associates who wanted him dead. But again, who was he? Why has no one ever come forward to identify him? Why has no missing persons report ever matched? Theory 4. He was a visiting performer or dancer. Remember those unusually developed calves? Some investigators theorize he was a ballet dancer or a performer of some kind, possibly visiting Adelaide for a show. Dancers often have that specific muscle development from years of working in point. But again, this doesn't explain the lack of identification, the removed labels, the coded message, or the manner of death. The investigation continues for years. Police follow up hundreds of leads. They check missing persons reports from around the world. They consult with international police agencies. They interview witnesses, check dental records, compare fingerprints. Nothing works. The Somerton Man remains unidentified. In 1949, unable to identify the body, authorities decide to bury him. But before they do, they make a death mask and take plaster casts of his head and torso, hoping that someday someone might recognize him. They also preserve tissue samples, though DNA analysis is decades away from being possible. The Somerton Man is buried at West Terrace Cemetery in Adelaide. His gravestone reads, "Here lies the unknown man who was founded. Somerton Beach, 1st December 1948. But even in death, the mystery continues to generate interest. The case becomes legendary in Australia. Books are written. Documentaries are made. Amateur investigators spend their entire lives trying to solve it. Fast forward to the 21st century. Advances in DNA technology offer new hope. In 2009, Professor Derek Abbott, a researcher at the University of Adelaide, becomes obsessed with the case. He begins investigating using modern forensic techniques. He contacts Justin's daughter, Kate Thompson, now an adult. Kate agrees to provide DNA samples for comparison. But there's a problem. The Somerton Man's body is buried, and South Australian law doesn't allow exhumation without permission from next of kin. Since the man's identity is unknown, there are no next of kin to give permission. Legal challenges ensue. Years pass. In 2021, after years of lobbying, the South Australian Attorney General finally grants permission for the exhumation. The body is carefully excavated in May 2021. DNA samples are extracted from the remains. They're surprisingly well preserved after 73 years. The DNA is analyzed using the latest genetic genealogy techniques, the same methods used to identify victims in cold cases and to find suspects through family trees. And in July 2022, an announcement is made. The Somerton Man has been identified. His name is Charles Webb. Charles Webb, electrical engineer, born in Melbourne in 1905. He had a wife and a son. He worked in various jobs around Australia. In the 1940s, he was living in Melbourne. But wait, if this identification is correct, why did no one report him missing in 1948? Why did no family come forward? Why did his fingerprints and dental records not match any files? The answers are complicated. Charles Webb's wife, Dorothy Robertson, had left him. They were separated, but not divorced. She had no reason to report him missing. She may have assumed he'd simply moved on. Their son was estranged from his father. No one was looking for Charles Webb. His dental records and fingerprints weren't on file because he had no criminal record and hadn't served in the military in a way that would have required fingerprinting. In 1948, there was no comprehensive database of every citizen's biometric information. But here's where it gets controversial. Not everyone accepts this identification. Some researchers have challenged the DNA findings. They argue that the genetic genealogy methods used are not definitive, that there could be errors, that the chain of custody for the DNA samples isn't perfect after 73 years in the ground. Derek Abbott, the researcher who pushed for the exhumation, stands by the identification. He says the DNA evidence is solid, that Charles Webb is the Somerton Man. Others aren't so sure. They point out that many of the mysteries remain unexplained. Why were the labels removed? What about the coded message? What about Justin's phone number in the book? What about the Tamam Shud scrap? If the Somerton Man was just Charles Webb, an electrical engineer with marital problems, why all the mystery? Why the elaborate staging? Why did he die? Let's assume for a moment that the identification is correct, that the Somerton Man was indeed Charles Webb. What does that tell us? Charles Webb was an electrical engineer. In 1948, that was a specialized field. Engineers with those skills were valuable, particularly in post-war Australia, as the country was rebuilding and modernizing. Could Webb have been recruited by an intelligence agency because of his technical skills? It's possible. Engineers, scientists, technical specialists, these were exactly the kinds of people intelligence agencies recruited during the Cold War. Could Webb have been working on something sensitive? Something that got him killed? It's speculative, but it fits the pattern. Or perhaps the spy theory is completely wrong. Perhaps Webb was simply a man with personal problems, a failed marriage, a son he'd lost contact with, depression, financial troubles. Perhaps he came to Adelaide to start over, or to end his life. Perhaps he removed the labels from his clothes because he didn't want to be identified. He wanted to disappear completely. The Tamam Shud scrap could have been a suicide note. It's ended. It's finished. His life, his troubles, everything. Over. But then what about the coded message? What about Justin's phone number in the book? Some researchers now believe Justin's involvement may have been overstated. Perhaps the phone number was written in the book by someone else, someone who knew her or was trying to contact her. Perhaps Justin's reaction when questioned by police wasn't guilt or fear. but simply shock at being dragged into a murder investigation. Perhaps there's no great conspiracy? Perhaps the Somerton Man, Charles Webb, was just an ordinary man with an extraordinary death. Or perhaps not. Here's what keeps this case alive, what makes it endlessly fascinating. Even with the identification, so many questions remain unanswered. If he was Charles Webb, why did he remove all the labels from his clothing? That's not normal behavior, even for someone planning suicide. It suggests intentional anonymity, a deliberate attempt to prevent identification. What poison killed him? Dr. Cleland was certain it was poisoning, but no poison was ever identified. Modern toxicology might be able to find traces that 1948 technology couldn't detect, but the body has been buried for 73 years. Any traces would be long gone. What does the coded message mean? If it's a code at all. No one has ever cracked it. It sits there, 5 lines of letters, tantalizing, mysterious, possibly meaningless. Why was he at Somerton Beach? Adelaide wasn't his home. What brought him there? Was he meeting someone? Was he running from something? What's the connection to Justin? If there was one, her phone number was in the book. That's not coincidence. But she took the truth to her grave. Justin died in 2007, never revealing what she knew, if anything. And why the theatrical staging? The position of the body, the half-smoked cigarette behind his ear, the legs crossed, the arm extended upward. It looked staged, deliberate. Was someone sending a message? Was the Somerton Man himself sending a message? There's another angle to consider. The possibility that the identification is wrong. Some researchers have pointed out inconsistencies. The DNA analysis used genetic genealogy, which traces family connections through shared DNA markers. It's the same technique used to identify the Golden State Killer and to solve other cold cases. But genetic genealogy is only as good as the database it uses. If the family tree has errors, if the connections are wrong, the identification could be wrong. Some skeptics argue that Charles Webb doesn't fit the physical description. The Somerton Man had unusual features: high-set ears, a distinctive jawline, specific dental characteristics. Do Charles Webb's known photographs match? The comparisons are inconclusive. Photographs from the 1940s aren't high quality enough for definitive facial recognition. There's also the question of the timeline. If Charles Webb disappeared from Melbourne in late 1948, did anyone notice? Were there any reports? Any inquiries? The historical record is sparse. And perhaps most troubling, if Charles Webb is the Somerton Man, where are his belongings? He had to have luggage, clothes, personal items. If he traveled from Melbourne to Adelaide, he would have had a suitcase. None was ever found. His hotel, if he stayed in one, was never identified. It's as if he materialized on the beach fully dressed and ready to die. The skeptics say the identification raises more questions than it answers. Let's talk about what we do know for certain. A man died on Somerton Beach on December 1st, 1948. He was approximately 40 to 45 years old, in excellent physical condition, well-dressed. He had no identification. Every label in his clothing had been removed. He died from poisoning, though no specific poison was ever identified. In his pocket was a scrap of paper reading, Tamam Shud, torn from a book of Persian poetry. The book was found in a car near the beach, left there by an unknown person. Inside the book was a phone number belonging to a local nurse, and a series of letters that may or may not be a code. The man was never reported missing by anyone. His fingerprints matched no database. His dental records matched no one. Despite massive publicity and international investigations, he was never identified during his lifetime or for 73 years after his death. In 2022, using DNA analysis, He was tentatively identified as Charles Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne. This identification is disputed by some researchers. These are the facts. Everything else is speculation, theory, hypothesis. So what really happened to the Somerton Man? Here's my assessment, having examined all the evidence, all the theories, all the investigations. I believe the Somerton Man knew he was going to die. The removal of labels, the lack of identification, the theatrical staging, all of this suggests someone who didn't want to be identified after death. This wasn't a random murder. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. I believe he was poisoned, either by his own hand or by someone else. The symptoms described in the autopsy, the gastric hemorrhage, the organ damage, are consistent with certain types of poisoning. If it was suicide, he had access to a poison that was rare or difficult to detect in 1948. I believe the Tamam Shud scrap was a message. Whether it was a suicide note, a romantic gesture, or a coded signal to someone else, it meant something to him. It's ended. It's finished. I believe the coded message, if it is a code, was meant for someone specific. Perhaps Justin, perhaps someone else. It may have been instructions, coordinates, a final message. Or it may have been nothing more than personal notes that we're reading too much into. As for whether he was a spy, I honestly don't know. The circumstantial evidence is tantalizing. The timing, the location, the tradecraft, the mystery. But there's no smoking gun. No confirmed connection to any intelligence agency. It's possible. But it's also possible he was just a man with secrets. A man who wanted to disappear. If the identification as Charles Webb is correct, it gives us a name, but doesn't solve the mystery. It just gives us a new set of questions. Why did Charles Webb go to Adelaide? Why did he want to die anonymously? What was he involved in? Who was destined to him? What does the code mean? We may never know. The Somerton Man case has become more than just an unsolved mystery. It's become a cultural phenomenon in Australia. His image, the death mask, the photographs have been exhibited in art galleries. Musicians have written songs about him. Writers have based novels on his story. He's appeared in countless documentaries, podcasts, and YouTube videos. There's something compelling about this mystery. Maybe it's the romance of it, the idea of a man with no identity, no past, appearing on a beach with a line of poetry in his pocket. Maybe it's the Cold War intrigue, the possibility of spies and codes and secrets. Or maybe it's something deeper. The Somerton Man represents a fundamental human anxiety, the fear of dying unknown, unremembered, unmourned. He's the ultimate lonely death. No one claimed him. No one buried him with love. He died alone and stayed alone. Until recently, he didn't even have a name. In December 2022, a headstone was placed on the Somerton Man's grave. It no longer says Unknown Man. It says Charles Webb, but underneath in smaller letters, it still says the Somerton Man, because that's who he'll always be. Even with a name, he's still the mystery. He's still the man who died on the beach with a poem in his pocket and secrets in his past. His story reminds us that identity is fragile, that we're only known as long as someone remembers us, that our lives can become mysteries if we're not careful to leave traces behind. The Somerton Man left traces, but they were deliberately obscured. He removed his labels. He hid his identity. He spoke in codes. And 75 years later, we're still trying to understand what he was trying to say. Somewhere in Adelaide, there may still be people who know the truth. People who knew Charles Webb. People who knew why he came to Somerton Beach that day. People who know what the coded message means. People who know if Justin was really involved, or if that was a red herring. But they're getting older. Time is running out. With each passing year, the witnesses die, the memories fade, the truth slips further away. Maybe that's what the Somerton Man wanted. Maybe he wanted to become a mystery, to be remembered not as Charles Webb, electrical engineer, failed husband, ordinary man, but as the Somerton Man, eternal enigma, the man who took his secrets to the grave. If that was his goal, he succeeded. Tamam Shud. It is ended. It is finished. But not really, because the mystery continues. The questions remain. The speculation goes on. Who was the Somerton Man? What brought him to Adelaide? Why did he die? What does the code mean? What was his connection to Justin? These questions may never be fully answered. And maybe that's okay. Maybe some mysteries are meant to remain mysteries. Maybe the Somerton Man understood this. Maybe that's why he removed all those labels, why he left only cryptic clues, why he staged his death like a final performance. He wanted to be remembered, but not understood. And in that, he achieved immortality. The Somerton Man lies in West Terrace Cemetery, finally bearing a name, but still wrapped in mystery. People still visit his grave. They leave flowers. They leave notes. They leave copies of the Rubaiyat. They pay respect to a man they never knew, a man whose story captured their imagination, a man who represents all the unanswered questions we carry through life. Who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? What secrets do we take to the grave? The Somerton Man doesn't answer these questions. He embodies them. And that's why, 75 years later, we're still talking about him. Still wondering. Still searching for the truth. Tamam Shud. Or perhaps not quite yet.